Hey everybody, this is Gregory from Dapp University, and today I have another guest on the channel. I've got McKie here from Amentum to talk about what developers should be building in the blockchain space. So welcome Stephen, we're glad to have you here today.
Thanks a lot, Greg. I appreciate it, man. Good to see you again since coming back from Memphis.
That's right, yeah, Stephen and I had a good time down at Ethereum conference in Memphis a few weeks ago. So excited to have Stephen on the channel today. So Stephen, before we jump in to talk about the kinds of things that developers should be focusing on in the blockchain space, you want to just kind of give a quick introduction about yourself and what you're working on with Amentum?
Yeah, of course. So, if the audience isn't familiar with who I am, as Gregory said, my name is McKie. I'm one of three founding partners for our firm, which is called Amentum, Amentum Investment Management, Amentum Capital. We are a hybrid hedge fund, venture capitalist fund. And so we do hedge investments in the cryptocurrency space for like public chain assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, et cetera, trying to basically outpace and outperform the market accordingly. And then also on the other side of that coin, we do more traditional style VC investing, some more illiquid types of investing like ICOs, the launch of new protocols on public chain assets, right, that we eventually tie into our existing like hedge portfolio, and then also equity related investments into, I guess, utility based crypto companies that are working on things that like either empower Web3 or to help like push crypto forward as a whole in some way, shape, or form. So this like kind of dualistic strategy enables us the ability to be able to kind of competitively invest in two different ways. Both in the assets that are pre-existing, to make a continuous IRR and a continuous like cadence of returns, but at the same time you get outsized performance by being able to invest in these protocols and these ICOs. So myself and my other two partners, we've been in the space for many years. Myself, the most senior, about 5.5 years now, going on 6 come November. I've done a myriad of different things in the space since being in crypto. When I first got in, I was about 21, 22, and I was still double majoring in CS and journalism at Old Dominion University in Virginia. And shortly after getting into crypto, I actually made a switch over to a hybrid program that we had called Information Systems Engineering, which was a combination of like computer science, IT, and entrepreneur, new business, and project management. So basically, I wanted to take my pre-existing programming skills and what I felt were already very adept writing skills and kind of like bolt on some other things that I felt like I really needed to know if I wanted to like eventually build a business and not just be sitting behind a desk. So my other two partners I've known since high school. Russ, he was in gifted classes with me together. We met in history class. He attended Stanford and studied EE and CS. My other partner, Kyle, I've known since college. And we were gem partners together, and he was a civil engineer. So we've collaboratively been in the space. Between all of us, hold a very, very deep kind of technical understanding of the space, maybe a game theoretic understanding of the industry, and we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've dabbled in mining. My other partners in things like investment banking. Myself, I've been a technical writer. I've been a front end developer. I've been like a product manager, a growth engineer, a news publication editor, now podcast host. So, I've been on like television and stuff, and that's cool. And, it's been a really wild ride. And so now I'm just looking to find really, really awesome, smart people to provide them capital, our expertise, our network, our knowledge base to help continue to build the future of crypto. And that's like basically the spiel.
Very cool. Yeah, so it sounds like you got a pretty extensive background and a great, bird's eye view of the space, as well as, a very in-depth knowledge of kind of everything that goes on, and really wrapping your head around a lot of things. And that excites me a lot to have that perspective on the channel today to kind of talk about, the kinds of things that the blockchain needs from a developer's perspective, and what are the needs that you're seeing that developers can fill, and as developers are coming into the space and learning to build decentralized applications, not just learning how to code, but what headspace should they start occupying when they're saying, hey, what should I build?
So in order to better understand where it is that we're going and what it is that we need, I guess, and what it is needs to be built, we first need to understand where we're at. So I guess like very quickly, We've been working really diligently from the developer community standpoint in regards to all the regular cadence of hackathons that have been happening pretty much since Ethereum's inception with DevCon 0. And with the growth of capital in the space and all these different ICO related projects and everyone building different utilities and projects, there's a lot of flexibility to have a lot of these different types of conferences that focus on building out more robust developer tool sets. So essentially, like, standardization is currently happening in relation to kind of like the stack on the types of tools you use, at least in regards to Ethereum. So like right now, it's kind of a very clear signal that we've legitimized a lot. So now that we have more mature tool sets, we can start to do other really awesome things. So, we've got the collaborative efforts of other like developer ecosystem funds, like the Stable Fund, the Ethereum Community Fund, Status Network has a fund. That pretty much everyone has. I have a fund. Everyone has a fund. And basically, what we're trying to do is we've got this capital, we've got this expertise. Now, where do we put it at? So, right now, we're really focused on these hackathons in order to grow the Ethereum developer community more, but then continue to sort of hack away at what's kind of left over that we need. And then, so that being said, is like that being where we're at, more so where we're going now is, like, as I stated prior, we have this sort of like standardization happening in the tools, but also standardization happening in the primitives. So basically, like, kind of like the low level, like cryptography powered, crypto economic powered, like libraries and, I guess, best practices in order to follow to create cool incentivized mechanism. So what I mean by that is we have things like ERC standards for staking, for identity, for loans, for so many different things that like continue to arise. And that being said, there's going to be multiple different types of individuals that are going to build POCs on top of these different standards. There's going to be people that come out with opposing standards that they believe are going to be improvements on top of that. And so we have all these different things going on at once and people building all these novel applications. Now we need to start amalgamating them, or essentially collating them together in different novel ways to like build new use cases. So that being said, since we have all this developer flexibility, giving what you can build on top of, it's important that we sort of push developers both publicly, and privately amongst within the crypto companies themselves, the individuals end up finding themselves to work at, to be curious and creative. So, you don't just rebuild legacy systems of today. You want to reimagine them in a more efficient manner, or if not in just a more efficient manner, in a more playful and or fun manner, whereas it still maintains the same functionality, but people are more incentivized to interact with that network there where they were not as previously. So as we continue to build new tools and make development easier for developers, right, we'll realize that large-scale, scalable innovation is not only possible as we continue to creatively, crypto-economically remix these things, and it'll not only will it continue to build useful things that are novel in their approach, but it'll continue to like surprise and delight other developers where they're like, oh shit, like I didn't even know that I could do that or build that, or what a cool idea. Like I really I would love to see this done in this way, X, Y, or Z. Right. So as more developers continue to see the big picture as to like that sort of epiphany, that enlightened moment, like, oh man, crypto is it. Right. So they'll be able to slowly come to the realization that there's more feasible projects that they can touch on that maybe they didn't even realize were possible. And I think as that simplicity compounds into complexity, that's where we'll see a lot of the beauty that we've not even experienced yet from a developer standpoint.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very cool. Mm-hmm. So maybe a couple things in there that I'd love to drill down on a little bit. For somebody who might be a newcomer to the space and are hearing some terms kind of thrown around that they may not understand, would you maybe elaborate on what you mean by like crypto economics?
Yes, of course, definitely. So I guess quick way to describe crypto economics, right? So we've got first, but without giving you a definition as a whole, crypto economics is sort of the word that we've come up with in crypto to explain how it is we incentivize people to one join these networks, but also how we programmatically enable them to do it trustlessly. So I actually have my own personal definition of crypto economics that I believe that a lot of other people sort of like converged on. So I'll give you it. So my definition of crypto economics is it's a multidisciplinary subset of modern economics that blends both crypto economic assets themselves, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, with the assurances of game theoretics using incentives and mechanism theory to mobilize market participation. So essentially what that means is it enables people to, for in an instance of, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, it allows outside custodians and or miners to incentivize them to aggregate transactions that happen on the network, to verify those transactions accordingly, and to include them into blocks, right? So that other individuals can interact with the network, right? That is essentially how proof of work works as a whole. So that being said, right, just explaining that is how it works is one thing. To explain why those incentives exist in the first place and why they were engineered in such a way, and why they had to be engineered in that manner in order to make people interact peer-to-peer trustlessly, that's the important part. So crypto economics seeks to understand what happens if you take cryptography, add monetary incentives or disincentives, and kind of the humans like inherent intrinsic lean towards greed. And then if you combine those three together, how can you combine them creatively to create order? So a cryptographic assurance that an individual or that owns a key can own a right to a property or value. I'll give you incentives or disincentives to either act in a good manner or to disincentivize you from acting as a bad actor, with some sort of like in protocol penalty, like burning your funds, which is i.e., destroying them, making you unable to, access them, or just like making you have a loss on, if you're mining a bunch of blocks, it uses a bunch of electricity. You don't want to have a block like end up getting orphaned or kicked off the network, because then all the electricity costs that went into producing that block is now wasted, right? That's considered like kind of a disincentive. And then at the end of the day, you have human greed. So in individuals, they want to earn, they want to self-actualize, they want to take care of themselves, right? And if they have access to a labor-backed means in order to, acquire wealth, they're going to do so, and they're going to try and do so as much as they can so they can be as comfortable as they can. So that being said, if I can incentivize someone with money to do and or do something, I can assure that if they do that thing, they will own something or an asset or a value, and it's going to directly incentivize them because humans are just like greedy and they want to feel safe because they all have like this hierarchy of needs. Then you can, if you take all those components together, you can get that person to do pretty much anything you want them to do, as long as you can meet those three needs. And so that's what crypto economics is in very short manner. So from there, you have kind of like the recombination of these different crypto economic primitives, as I was describing prior. And so like what you would seek to do then is remix these pre-existing primitives to develop new mechanisms to create incentives for individuals to transact with either your decentralized service or a decentralized application. So when you're going to develop things in crypto, there's kind of a few tenets and kind of a few questions like you need to ask yourself. Before I get there, maybe you have any other questions about anything I said.
No, I think that fully covers it. Maybe clarify your term primitive from a computer science standpoint.
Yeah, primitive. So like from like kind of a low level standpoint, how an individual in this relation to say Ethereum, how is an individual going to take this building block of say a particular like smart contract, and then like reapply that in some other like novel manner. So like developers and in the space develop these primitives, these like basic models, these building blocks of how an individual will interact with the contract on the network. And then from there, then you append your additional application layer on top of that. So your primitive can be focused around like non-fungible tokens. Your primitives can be focused like CryptoKitties. Your primitives can be focused around like ERC, like 20 assets, themselves. there. So basically, you take these different building blocks and you say, how am I going to build something else from that? An example would be, I have an ERC20 asset, which is like the industry accepted standard to build a token, right? For whatever your means is, whether that's fundraising or for some like Dapp related ecosystem, and then appending an ERC 721 non-fungible token to that ERC 720 token. So now you have a fungible asset which directly maps to a non-fungible asset, right?
Sure.
And so now you can do even more creative things than you could have done if those two assets were separate. And that's what I mean by kind of like the remixing is thinking creatively what we have on the table and what can we use given already pre-existing knowledge to create something new.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you got to start asking yourself a few questions when you start exploring these different types of primitives, right? So what crypto economic tools or standards are useful today? Like what's hot? What are people talking about? What are people building at the hackathons? What are people finding are the easiest things to build on top of, right? What inefficiencies exist presently in whatever, either industry, application specific niche that you're trying to tackle or whatever your expertise stems from, and you're trying to think, well, how do I build something useful for that? Like, why? Think about an issue that your industry has, or what it is you're working on, and think, why haven't we been able to like fix these issues up until today in the present? And given those crypto economic primitives that we have, is there any way that I can embed them into the heart of this application, into its logic, to either to improve, to make the app more sticky, to make it more useful, to provide more value for your end users, right? Sort of like start thinking about these things, teasing those out, and then think, how can I recompile them into something more engaging and innovative? And then I think that's one of the hardest things that developers in the space coming into crypto find is they're like, okay, first I need to master Web3. Okay, and like interacting with those objects in the browser. Great. Okay, now I need to wrap my head around like Solidity. All right, that's cool. And it's like, okay, now I need to wrap my head around like modern like web dev tools. Maybe I'm just like a normal like back-end developer and I don't necessarily like worry about things that are like happening in the the front end. So now I'm like, I need to familiarize with all these things, and then now you have all these pieces at play, and you're like, okay, well, what issues do I tackle? And then like that's like and when you're at a hackathon, for instance, you usually have a small scope. You start learning about tools. You start learning about hashing things to a blockchain. So you're like, all right, I can hash data to a blockchain. And then you start, looking into like unique identity, which is basically just like a private key that somebody owns. And then you just say that this person owns it. So like, okay, so then they learn about like private key management and individuals being able to like access like services with private keys. Cool. But then once you get past those like very like fast, like quick, like, oh, duh, I get it. Like that's how crypto works. Here's some advantages. Yeah, decentralized access, decentralized file storage, IPFS, cool. But then the next question is, well, what the hell can I do with these things that's going to be interesting at all whatsoever? Like whether you want to either build utility and create something useful, or whether you're like trying to come up with the next $1 million Dapp idea, then you're going to have to start somewhere. So you're going to have to start with those problems. So like first question I'd ask myself is, can this whatever I'm working on be improved programmatically with traditional software? Like if my idea that I'm coming up with, can it be built in a traditional manner with a legacy stack? And if so, then do that. If not, does a decentralized component, if I was to like take some portion of whatever it is I'm looking to build, decentralize it in some manner, whether that's like data access, whether that is user sign-ons, whether that is data, whatever like thing whatever component I'm looking to make distributed or decentralized. If I make this component, will it add complexity to the user experience? If yes, why do it in the first place? If no, and it actually does remove some sort of complexity or inefficiency, then the next question you should ask yourself is, do I modularize this solution that can be plugged into a traditional service, right? So if I take this decentralized component, do I build all the other components decentralized too? Or do I just make the most important piece decentralized? For instance, say if I had like an auction company that facilitated buying and selling between users, and I just need to be able to confirm that when a user sells a good to someone else, that the seller doesn't receive their money until the user confirms that they get that item. So basically, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I need to create some sort of like primitive, some sort of contract around escrows. And then you're like, okay, cool. Like I could create a decentralized ID for this kind of person, a decentralized ID for this person. We'll create decentralized data storage to store all their images and all that stuff. Or you just do all the other stuff on a traditional legacy stack and then just make the escrow itself decentralized. And then we remove the trust from the money, right? Sure. It's like, oh, I could have just rebuilt everything, or I could have taken the most important piece and got pretty much just about as good as additional efficiency as I've gotten, right? Because at what point you're going to exceed additional kind of like labor and both capital and just like just from like an employee basis standpoint to build out these services that might not give you additional efficiencies that you were hoping for in the end. And so basically you're basically asking yourself, do I need to rebuild and decentralize everything? And if the piece can be modularized as I described, then at that point you ask yourself, what smart contract enabled modular component or improvement or primitive will reduce the most inefficiency? So like how will I get the most bang for my buck? And then from there, you just work to make it pretty, make it marketable, and try and build out a user base and stuff from there. And it's really all there is to it. And I think a lot of people just sort of think of it as like, oh, we're just going to decentralize the whole world. We're going to do it all at once. We're going to do it in one weekend too. It's going to be great. And
at a hackathon.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet. The scalability isn't quite there yet. Would love to be in this sort of like utopian software development environment, but we're not, with unlimited amounts of resources and throughput. But we'll get there, maybe.
We've almost got unlimited amounts of money.
We almost have unlimited amounts of money. This is true. This is very true. So we got that far. It's kind of funny that someone had a quote about this sort of interestingly. When it comes to crypto economics, that I think is worthwhile mentioning, it's that the introduction of like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and these other assets did something very interesting. It kind of changed the thermodynamics of economics, wherein typically you would need your existence is a liability, and you would need to accrue wealth and accrue resources in order to keep yourself going. Now with crypto economics, it incentivizes you to participate in the system. So instead of there being an outflow of resources from yourself economically and your existence was a liability, now your existence is an asset because the network itself is paying you to incentivize you. So it literally flips kind of like human social interaction on its head all at once. And it's one of those things that people don't really realize it until it's happening. And when they realize that they're kind of accruing wealth by just interacting in the system, whereas normally they would interact with the system and they would lose wealth. And so when you start thinking about things like, start thinking about decentralization and building dApps like that. How can I take outside resources, outside capital, outside, whatever, and provide that value to my user in some new or novel way? Or if I'm a pre-existing, incumbent, logistics, megalith like FedEx, and I'm going to decentralize logistics and tracking and track every SKU on Earth and all this sort of stuff and all that, and I'm going to save myself billions of dollars a year, Great, but at this point, all you've done is been able to make yourself capable of making more money. Now, if you have the capable now to make, with these, removal of inefficiencies that saves you hundreds of millions or billions of dollars a year, sure, you could take all that money and that revenue, and now like, okay, cool, now you have additional profit at the end of the year, at the end of the quarter. Or how can I creatively think about, if I'm going to save our giant mega corporation money, how can I interject and take some of that value and provide it back to the users that are creating that value for us, so that we can continue to grow efficiently. Sorry about that. I had a phone call.
That's all right.
So that being said, it's just like, I am a monopoly in this field. If I remove this inefficiency, I'm going to remove the one cost that was always holding me back. Now I have unlimited earning potential. Cool. How do you get that back to the participants, the employees, the outside agents, the externalized agents that are interacting with the system? How do you use that to create, a cycle of value creation? And that is what we are always seeking to do, is think about how to take power from one disparate group or one group that isn't getting its fair share, and then trickle that down accordingly and make that so it's programmatic and it always happens that way, so that it's more fair.
And that's sort of the spirit of decentralization at its core.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And that is kind of like why we're here at the end of the day, I think. And I think it's important that, quote unquote, the concept of decentralization obviously can be done in a myriad of different ways. You can, call it whatever it is you want it. You can put it in any other sort of system that you can imagine. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to create more time for people, more value for people. And so we need to make sure we keep that at the forefront of what it is we're doing.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. So, you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation today, kind of where we came from, where we are, where, what developers need to know to kind of get started and push this thing forward. So where do you think we're headed? And, what maybe do you expect to see towards the end of this year, maybe a year from now?
As far as
decentralized applications and yeah.
Yep. So we'll see a lot of interesting things happen in regards to one, governance. We're already kind of seeing that. Like, for governance, can that happen on chain? Can it be done feasibly? Can it be done fairly? And that being said, can it be done better than we've currently been looking at it now? And governance comes in a lot of ways, like whether it's in protocol or it's not in protocol, and it just has to do with some relations to governance for the actual assets development and improvement over time, whether that's by like a foundation or like another outside body. Those governance perspectives and us evolving about how we interact with each other socially, and then trying to think about how we've interacted with each other socially thus far to get crypto governance and get crypto where it is right now, and how can we take the best parts that allows us to work together more cohesively and more quickly, and how can we move those same mechanisms in protocol in a sense where it's still democratic, it's still fair, there's not a concentration of wealth for decision making, and we can actually ensure that the right things are built and the right people and the right objectives are focused on from a community standpoint. Governance is going to be huge, because governance is going to play a part in how quickly like new developer tool sets are built, how new in protocol improvements are made to all these different cryptocurrencies. That's going to be really big. There's also going to be a lot of evolution as far as like kind of just the theory of money as a whole. We've been learning a lot about economics, what works and what doesn't work, markets, supply and demand, kind of like global liquidity access, regulations, like how those affect cryptocurrencies and their growth. And that is like very interesting, because we get to see this on a very, very short time scale. And we can see all these sort of different things play out and learn sort of kind of like where our ecosystem is going to grow. And I think that's going to be kind of hugely important for us going forward.
Oh, lost your mic there for a second.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I think that's going to be hugely important for us going forward. And then on top of that, we also have the creation of proof of stake that came about, in the past like 6-7 years. I believe the very first implementation of proof of stake was Sunny King for Peercoin. And kind of like since then, the concept of taking the best parts of proof of work and then trying to replicate those in an in-protocol software way, where like the externalized factors of proof of work and those economies of scale, building hardware, kind of like the sunk costs of setting up mining farms and needing to make that money back going forward in the future with additional operations and et cetera. Basically, like proof of work has a lot of outside factors that push miners to continue to be trusted, not necessarily just in protocol, but also because there are business expenses, like logical things that keep you in place. So those tiny little nuances of proof of work are very important, and they actually play hugely in how proof of stake is developed. So, Bitcoin in relation to the miners themselves and the mining pools, where proof of stake, you've got, validator nodes and staking pools, and kind of what are the best ways to, construct a mechanism that will provide you the security of proof of work, but will also have the appropriate incentives and disincentives to sort of match that and to be more fair and at the same time more energy efficient. So staking on both the public chain perspective, but then also the token perspective. So if you have a tokenized ecosystem, or just like a token as a whole, and you build a Dapp ecosystem on top of that, and your token has some sort of unique staking capability to it, where you take your wealth, you stake that to this network, and then you gain some like fixed return on top of that, then they would then, you hope to reinvest back into this ecosystem. Kind of like, how do you create stickier networks? How do you, use crypto economic primitives to make those networks even stickier? So more explorations around that, continued standardizations around things like, again, loans, identity, non-fungibles, all that sort of stuff. All those things are going to continue to grow. A great way to keep up on top of that is, I believe it's eips.ethereum.org. Mm-hmm. So that's the Ethereum improvement proposals that are kind of going out, and you can go through there and check and go through GitHub and take a look at all the different kind of ERC standards and stuff that are sitting on the table that are being drafted. And so, kind of we're thinking about where can we make these kind of like pieces more easy for developers to digest, and at the same time, how do we continue building all the components for the developers to use? So we'll continue to settle on various different standards, and then we'll also see multiple different parties come on with their own multiple different types of competing standards, and then eventually, we would hope that they would come to a decision and a consensus on one as the space grows. So just a lot of basic building blocks, man. Just developer education, us continuing to build out the infrastructure and the tooling and the utility necessary in order to interact with these blockchains more easily. Getting things ready for consumers, because I think we're getting really, really, really close. CryptoKitties was great and all. It showed us that we are very close to like having consumer appeal, and we've got a lot of really cool dApps and everything coming off. We've moved transactions off chains to like generalized state channels with like folks like SpankChain and Funfair and all those guys are doing. The Loom guys are working on their dApp chains, and their zombie chains where they're putting like decent like DPoS into their own Ethereum side chains, so you can get the best of EOS but on the Ethereum public chain itself. Like all this just really cool tooling is just like springing up out of nowhere. And as we were saying earlier, the capital is abundant, so I see no reason why that's going to slow down. And as there's like this sort of like half-life, this sort of like period of like this learning curve for like developers in the space before they reach that oh shit, I got it, like, oh, I can do everything sort of like codes in crypto. And so we had a lot of newcomer developers that probably came on the fall of 2017, and this fall will be about a full year since they've been in cryptocurrency. They've seen the price boom and bust. They've gotten hardened by that. They've seen tooling grow and expand very, very quickly, and I think it's going to continue to get folks even more excited going into this next holiday season and into the fall, and when everyone finally sits back at home with their families to kind of talk about everything we've been building in creation. I think the conversations that we'll have this year will be even far more exciting than they were last year, and I'm excited to play a part in helping those conversations be more exciting year over year.
Very cool.
Yep.
Well, Stephen, that's a great explanation of all those things. Great insight into both the past, present, and the future. Mm-hmm. I think I lost your camera there again. You're just trying to hide from me today.
I really don't know, man. I'm like not that insecure.
That's no worries. So yeah, I really enjoyed all that. Before we wrap up here today, is there anything else you'd like for the people watching to know? And B, if people want to keep up with you and what you're doing at Amentum, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep up with myself. You can follow me on Twitter at Stephen_Mackie. So Stephen with V _MCKIE. You can also follow Amentum on Twitter at AMENTUM. I have my own podcast and publication that I was describing to you, Block Channel. So, if you want to listen to my podcast on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or any of those cool podcast apps that you guys love, just look up Block Channel. I put out episodes fairly relatively, kind of regularly, but it really depends on the month and how much of my workload I have. And then on top of that, if you're looking and you're very interested in learning about Ethereum development, I advise a company. I'm going to plug it in there. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Zastrin, Zastrin.com, Zastrin, which I believe is the Sanskrit translation for the word knowledge, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome.
If you were curious where that name came from. And that is a Solidity developer, kind of like a code academy for Solidity development. And the founder is Mahesh Murthy, really awesome guy, has some really great tutorials for building Solidity dApps. But on top of that, he just recently added videos. So, he's got a lot of really kind of varied content if you want to jump into Solidity development and build some really useful projects. And that's about all I got for you as far as plugs. I'm going to continue doing what I do at Amentum into Block Channel, educating and promoting and growing and evangelizing and helping entrepreneurs build and helping investors make money. But also at the same time, I want to ensure that everyone has the resources that they need necessary for the industry to grow from a developer standpoint. So that's all I have to plug. Go out there and build, and if you build something really cool, contact me. Maybe I'll give you money for it.
Awesome. That's great, Stephen. Everybody, join me again in thanking Stephen for coming on the channel today. Go check out Stephen on Twitter. Check out his podcast over at Block Channel. Check out Amentum, and check out everything going on at Zastrin as well. So, Stephen, again, I really enjoyed this. I want to sign off for us now. Everybody, be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this, where I'm having conversations with Stephen, who are deep in the Ethereum and blockchain space. And until then, thanks for watching Dapp University.
Thanks, Greg.